The book of Chrissy Cymbala's life begins with these words: "Every life has its share of twists and turns. Hers is no different because her life features a young woman who lost her way and a miracle that led her back home."
Chrissy Cymbala Toledo felt the pressures of being the perfect pastor's kid. Her parents are Jim and Carol Cymbala, pastors of Brooklyn Tabernacle, a 16,000-member church famous for its Grammy Award-winning choir. But by the time she was a teen, Chrissy was obsessed with her looks and boys. In her book, Girl in the Song, Chrissy shares the unimaginable, a secret pregnancy, and how it paved the way for her to come home.
Chrissy Cymbala Toledo is here with us now. And Chrissy, we welcome you to the 700 Club.
Thanks.
Your book is called Girl in the Song. Tell me about the title. What does that mean?
Well, as a young lady, my world, I was surrounded by music. My life was surrounded by, really by psalms and hymns and spiritual songs, being in a great church like the Brooklyn Tabernacle.
Yeah, we've all loved that music.
Oh, such a blessing. But as a teenager, my ears started waking up to another song.
Yeah.
And this song told me that I needed to be more than just pretty, more than perfect. There was something about that girl that I was just so intrigued by.
That's not an unusual thing, is it? I mean, a lot of young women, I think, in not just the music that's listened to, but the pictures in magazines, just everything speaks to perfection and having to, and perfection about how you look, all of the exterior in things. I want to say that you also, before we even get to page 1, you wrote, "My life had once been wonderful. How had things gone wrong?" Where did that begin to happen for you? Because it's one thing to listen to music and, you know, have that feeling that I'd like to be more than I am or need to be. But then it's another when you start making choices so different than the way you were raised.
So different. You know, I became deceived.
Yeah.
I just became deceived, starting to believe the lie that I had to be good enough to be chosen.
Yeah.
I knew I was good enough to be chosen by God, but the world, the messages of the media, and what my magazines were telling me and what my songs were telling me was something other.
Yeah, you know, the enemy of God is called the father of lies. And boy, once we start down that path, it's really hard to do an about face.
It is.
And come back again. For you, it was a relationship with a guy that at another time in your life, I don't think you probably would have even necessarily been drawn to. But this relationship really locked and loaded your heart. How did that change your life?
It turned my life upside down. You know, we were like spirits, and we met, and I was probably the worst person he could have met. He was a new Christian, and it turns out that it just went south quick.
Yeah.
It was a secret. My parents didn't know it.
Yeah.
And before long, it became intimate, and I had saved myself for marriage. And once that happened, he had my heart. He was carrying it around New York City, and it turned things upside down, and it got really ugly.
Yeah. And ultimately, what happened to you is what happens to so many Christian girls that wind up in a relationship going beyond what they ever anticipated. You wind up pregnant.
I did.
And how your mom and dad had such a close relationship with you, loved you so much, and you respected and loved them so much. You were able to hide that pregnancy until you were almost 7 months pregnant. How'd you do that?
I don't know. You know, I tell girls, I tell women when I speak to them, sin makes you a fool. Do you do things you never would imagine you would do? And you become numb. You become oblivious to these destructive choices that you're making. And it turns out I was living in my home, covering up, adding more layers. It was in the 80s, and before you knew it, I was far along in my pregnancy, and my mom confronted me. And she said, you know, "Chrissy, you're pregnant?" And I said, "Yeah, Mom, due in 8 weeks.
Wow. You know, there were so many places as I read your book, I marveled at the love of God. There were so many places where he interrupted what you were doing with telling people who loved and cared about you or showing them that things were out of order in your life. And yet when we buy the lie, you know, we almost can't receive that for a while. You then had a beautiful little girl. You thought about putting her in the foster care system because you felt inadequate in your capacity, but in the end, you kept her with you.
I kept her.
What did God speak to your heart?
I felt like I was unfit to be her mom. I was everything she wasn't, and I didn't know how to. I made the decision before I had her. I would put her in foster care and decide what to do. Yeah. But when I had her, there was an explosion of love in that room. And those days of her being in the foster care system, I was losing my mind. I wanted my baby back, and I didn't know how I would do it. And I knew I was still obsessed with this relationship, but I was going to make it. Susie and I were going to make it somehow.
Yeah. How did God, I mean, here you were, you loved your mom and dad, but your lifestyle and the lies that had been a part of it separated you from them. You still have feelings for this guy. It's an unhealthy relationship. Now you bring a baby into this. How did God grab hold of your heart and say, Christy, wake up? Or Chrissy, wake up?
Well, I'll tell you, the first thing real quickly is that my parents drew a line in the sand.
Yes.
And they said, we are not going to support you anymore, destroying your life.
That in the book. I just went, whew.
I never thought they'd do it. And as a parent now, looking back, it was the greatest thing they ever did.
But how hard?
It was so hard. I've never seen a parent support their children in that way and things go well.
Yeah.
You got to draw a line. And my parents did that. And then the church prayed.
Yeah. And it was prayer that broke through.
It was prayer.
Wasn't it? Which is not unusual coming from Brooklyn Tab, because that's sort of the cornerstone of everything at the church. But tell us how that happened.
Well, I wasn't at that prayer meeting naturally, but I was in Brooklyn, and I was laying in my bed, probably the lowest point of my life. I laid in bed and I saw, it was as real as anything. I saw this dark figure and this light figure, Terry, in my room. And my daughter was in her crib, and this dark, ugly, hideous thing started telling this light figure, I have her, and it pointed to me, and then it went over my daughter's crib and said, and now she's mine. Wow. But strangely enough, I didn't scream, I didn't call for help, I just went to sleep. What I didn't know is the Brooklyn Tabernacle was calling upon the Lord. It was like a labor room, and they were giving birth to my miracle that night.
Unbelievable. How's God using you now? You've got the Chicago tab. Tell us about that.
It's the greatest thing. I would never be in ministry today if I hadn't experienced the love of God for myself. And now it's with passion. I wake up on Sunday mornings and serve for 3 services, leading worship and pastoring. We have a multi-ethnic, just wonderful group of people in Chicago. And my heart is to see every woman especially just know that for God, she's good enough. Yeah. He tells us every day, his love tells us every day that he loves us, that it's going to be faithful, that it doesn't change. What we've done doesn't change how he feels about us.
He came to set the captives free, and I thought as I read your story from beginning to end that Romans 28 is here. Amen. That all things work together for good. Even the junk, even the foolish choices that we make, in the end given to him, are used to make a difference. It's a great book. Girl in the Song is the name of it. You can learn more from Chrissy's life by getting her memoir. It's available wherever books are sold. I highly recommend you read it. Give it to a daughter or a woman that you love in your life that matters. It's a great message. Chrissy, thank you for being here.
Thank you,
it's so nice
Terry.
to have you.
God bless you.
God bless you.